Good morning, it's Dadhichi here, and it's July 2016. I'm in transit right now, hence the mess here. I'm staying in Sydney and in the process of selling my mother's property. So I'm sort of in a state of flux here, but what I wanted to talk to you about as an introduction to this month's monthly forecasts is the mind. I forget who it was that said it, but one's own mind is either your best friend or your worst enemy. Makes a lot of sense, and if you look back through your life, when you're having those important transitions or problems, you realize that the way you think, it determines really the event and in the long term your destiny. Two people can have exactly the same events happening to them, but actually be experiencing two completely different destinies. And that has everything to do with the attitude you bring to the event or circumstance. The third house of the horoscope, that third space, and there are 12 spaces, relates to the conscious mind, the habitual mind, the mind that is sort of, I guess you'd call it superficial. That's the mind that is, conditioned. The opposite side of the horoscope has the ninth house. So you have the third house here, and right opposite the top end you have the ninth house. This is called the higher mind. This is supposedly the spiritual mind, the philosophizing mind, the mind that I suppose would be free from the constraints of the conditioning that we all go through in our cultural or family or educational and cultural backgrounds. And that is really the mind we should aspire to if we are to break free of these limiting patterns, because it's those cultural and educational patterns that keep us tethered to a certain line of thought. Recently I've stepped back and I've been looking at the conversations I'm having with people next door, my family, professionals, highly educated people. And it's interesting, I fear that what's going on is that this patterning or conditioning is putting most of us in a situation where we are fearful. I'm wondering whether the word fearful is appropriate. But let me say this, the position where we don't necessarily want to think outside those patterns that we've been conditioned to think along. That's the third house of the horoscope. And this is very, very unusual because, most of us live in a democracy where we're told free thought, freedom of speech is encouraged, yet every year more and more what I see is political correctness versus political incorrectness. And it seems like the case for stomping on politically incorrect speech is growing. I find myself sometimes surrounded by groups of people, ready to shoot me because I question. Sometimes I'm not actually making a statement, whether it be about climate control, whether it be about, JFK or John Lennon assassinations. I'm questioned and And that's a concern for me. Because questioning doesn't necessarily mean you're advocating a particular position, although sometimes it would be seen to be that way. And that to me is the ninth house of the horoscope speaking, that questioning mind. Of course, there's another type of mind. In fact, Vedic astrologers talk very much about the fifth house of the horoscope, which is the creative mind, the spontaneous or intuitive mind. And that fifth house has a lot to do with people in professions like me, astrologers, who use their intuitive mind to give information to clients or friends. And that comes from a wholly different area of one's being. The intuitive mind is not subjected to any of the educational or rational processes that the third or the ninth house of the horoscope may have, but rely more on the intuitive or direct apperception of things. And that's also where you can get into a little bit of hot water as an astrologer, because sometimes when a rationalist says, well, where's your proof for that particular statement? You say, well, I don't have any proof, I've just got this sense. You know what I'm talking about. There are many of you listening to this that also have the same experience, where you just know that you know, and there's no rational reason for that. And so what I'm saying in our introduction this month, folks, is that you need to balance that third house, active, superficial, conditioned mind, with this ninth house, higher mind, the investigative mind, and the fifth house, the intuitive mind, to come to your own conclusions about what's happening in life. It does appear to me that when you look, for example, at the gun lobby group in the US, even the rational mind would tell you that, hey, semi-automatic rifles, 50 deaths just this last week, thousands and thousands of deaths. Isn't it rational to say, hey, let's put together a law that at least limits the availability of guns and weapons of this nature that are going to cause carnage in society? But no, this is the reverse sort of thinking, where the rational mind is subservient to the conditioned mind and the habituated mind and the mind that is, I'm not going to say brainwashed, but very much cleaned by media, which has its own media and education, which seems to have its own narrative. At the moment you deviate from that narrative, you're in hot water. I always refer to Frank Zappa's statement, that saying wherein he said, without deviation, there is no progress. And that deviation, I think, is the ninth house, that part of your being which is courageous enough to step outside the conditioned narrative or view, to think for yourself, study for yourself, even if you risk ridicule and severe judgment. Hang around, I'm going to do the 12 signs now. Hopefully that wasn't too heavy for you. This is brought to you by our website, astrology.com.au. We're the down under site that seems to be doing okay up over. So to all of you, new and regular visitors, thanks for tuning in. Look forward to your company again. Take care now. Bye-bye.